Mount Hope Cemetery began its duties in 1856, over 11 years before the university ever opened its doors. Before, the citizens of Champaign-Urbana were buried on their own property, in farmland, or in unmarked graves in forgotten corners. Much like most pockets of the world that used to interact with their dead, it was families that were charged with caring for their deceased. But, due to the expansion of the town, the cemetery was made, and within a few decades of its making, the industry for its craft had fallen, and the graveyard fell into disarray. Headstones have fallen, left there for so many years that the earth has begun to envelop them. Roads have grown over, trees left to rot with the corpses below them. This has stayed the same since the 1800s when it began. But, in order to attempt to combat this, part of the cemetery was sold off in the 90s. This has become the Rose Lawn, an attempt to create funding for the cemetery and continue improvements. Newer headstones appear here, clean and immaculate, their families still young enough to be alive and visit. Even with this attempt, the fact still remains that Champaign is a place that people come to leave. It is rarely the space where people stay to die. My father has always said this when we were younger. Champaign is meant for growth, but sometimes you don't get to grow, and instead your grave is a marker of your experience. The stuffed animals you loved before your time to form new attachments, the birthday you no longer get to celebrate. I wonder how others interact with these moments. For me, it is a time to think back to all those times that I feared my own mortality. I was always too young. It was something so far off into the future. So I passed the cemetery on the drive to my father's work. I held my breath and lifted my feet in respect, but never once went inside. This is the case for many people who live here. The cemetery is a landmark within the daily routine, a passing thought, if that, as you get caught up in traffic. For some, it is terrifying. Others, it is forgettable. Only once you make the choice to go inside do you understand the serenity, the hope within the loss. Families still love their children. Married couples choose to be buried forever, and religious people forever remember their faith. A person is not forgotten once they are gone. They are remembered by the smallest but most important facets of their lives.